So, Scott, if you maybe you can give us a little bit of an introduction about yourself.
Sure. And you and Dan know me pretty well, so for Heather, Dr. Nikki, and the others who will join us. Yeah, I you know in the capacity I'm sharing today, I guess what I do professionally is I teach meditation and I teach as a Buddhist teacher, Buddhist mentor, and I've been doing that since 2008. But that's kind of connected into a wider scope of, I guess you could say, sort of the study of Buddhism, practice of meditation since about the year 2000. And yeah, so basically, I was a monk for 9 years of that time, and after that, I started to teach more and mentor more practitioners and meditators, and that sort of turned into, I guess, we don't technically have a profession like the way we think of it in the Occidental world, being a Buddhist teacher. But of course, now as we you know are out there in the world, we have to figure out a way to do this. So when I stopped being a monk in 2017, I started working more formally as a Buddhist mentor for people, as a meditation mentor. I do a lot of course, work influenced by Buddhism and Buddhist meditation, but I also do a lot of somatic work with people. I'm not a therapist, nor do I want to be, even though I really value it and I respect you guys' profession. I have a lot of I work with therapists, so that's often some of the mentees I work with. But I tend to work with people more influenced by Buddhist psychology and Buddhist practice, and the somatic work will be influenced by that with people. So, I do work with a variety of people. And I do prefer when people have a therapist as well as work with me. So if they're dealing with some more trauma history or things like that, I prefer they also have a therapist. As I'm pretty explicit, I don't do therapy with people. But of course, uh, a lot of modern therapy is derived from Buddhist thought, not all of it, but a good portion of it. And when we're talking about Buddhism, we're also talking about working with our emotions. We're talking about mostly working with pain, actually. And the word pain isn't always like the word that encapsulates everything. We have a word called dukkha, which kind of encapsulates discomfort, pain, dissatisfaction. Trauma would be included in the word dukkha. So Buddhism has been working with that for 2,600 years. So yeah, I tend to work from that lens. So anyways, yeah, if you want to know more, I'm happy to say, but that's kind of like a short introduction of what might be applicable to you all here.
It's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Um, I always enjoy your meditation that you lead. I was hoping maybe you could, lead us for a while, and then we can get
Yeah.
the discussion maybe after that.
Yeah, sounds good. Maybe we'll do like 15 or 20 minutes and we can go from there.
Sounds perfect.
So I know Dan, you and Corey meditate, but I also know probably, you know, Heather, Dr. Nikki, and others who'll join us, probably I'm guessing you've meditated before, right? It's now kind of ubiquitous mindfulness. So, in some kind of a way, that's really wonderful. And in another way, I'm going to kind of ask you to forget what you know for the next 20 minutes, right? In a healthy way, right? Not completely. We can't actually forget what we know, but you know what I mean. So go ahead and just find a posture that's relaxed yet alert. If you're sitting in a chair, just sort of making sure you're upright a little bit. If you want to sit cross-legged on the floor, that's also fine. It's not necessary. And just sort of relaxing the body for a minute, shifting the body, doing what you need to just start to feel comfortable in that position. When we raise the body upright, we're not trying to be tense or tight. We're just trying to allow the energy to stay awake, basically, so we don't sort of slump in meditation. And most people are used to closing their eyes with meditation. This is actually part of the posture. I teach open-eyed meditation, but since probably most of you are not used to that, I'm just going to say, you're welcome to close your eyes, or sometimes we recommend half open, so the eyelids are half open here, and we're gazing downwards. But you'll see me with my eyes open, and when I'm meditating with my eyes open, I'm not looking straight ahead. I'm looking here, right? So you can just experiment with what you need. Just take a moment to decide what kind of gaze you want for the next 15 or 20 minutes. Closed, half open, fully open, whatever feels comfortable to you. And so much of meditation is based on using the breath as an anchor. So we're going to use that a little bit, but I'm also going to expand the practice. Here we're going to connect the breath to the feet, just allowing yourself to start to play with the idea of sensing the feet. You need to wiggle your toes or just move your feet a little bit on the floor. That's fine. Just start to bring more and more of your attention to the feet. We don't need 100% attention. 70, 75 is fine. Just feeling the feet as the feet, sensing the floor below you, sensing the sides of the feet, the back, the front. We're going to start to introduce the attention to breath here, but we're going to connect it to the feet. So we're going to more or less breathe in and out of the nose, if that's okay for you. When you breathe in through the nose, just a gentle rhythm, doesn't have to be elongated necessarily, just a normal breathing rhythm. And when we breathe in, we're going to breathe into the feet. And again, of course, this is not happening literally, but we're just allowing ourselves to feel as if we're connecting to the feet on the inhalation. On the exhalation, breathing out from the nose, just relaxing down into the feet, down into the ground. So there's a sense of connection, the sensation to a very grounded sensation, our sensation of the feet, but also our connection to the ground and earth below us. On the inhalation, on the exhalation, just relaxing, letting everything drop down, letting your energy drop down, letting preoccupation drop down if it can. If it can't, we just leave it alone. It's fine as it is. Actually, meditation is not about pushing away thoughts, so thoughts are allowed, but we're just bringing more of our attention to the breath and body here. It's sort of as if there can be a noise outside and you allow the noise to exist, but you're actually bringing more of your awareness and attention to the breath and feet. So from here, for some of you familiar more with somatic work or work with sensation in the body and interoception, you can start to be aware of more of the body. There's an alternative version of this practice where there's a full body breathing, where when we breathe in, there's just a sense of the entire body. It doesn't have to be anything specific, just the felt sense. When you breathe out, just allowing the body to rest or drop or be at ease. And if it can't be at ease, just being at ease with it, not being at ease. Basically, just letting things be as they are, not trying to force them to relax or change. We're not even really trying to make it better. We're just bringing attention, but we're also bringing a sense of safety and ease. Now, of course, here sometimes we do notice things that are up for us, anxieties, fears, other kinds of wounding. We absolutely cannot pull away from those, and they're sucking us into repetitive thinking, catastrophizing, anxiety loops. We just simply come to the breath, count the breath, label in on the inhalation, label out on the exhalation. So there's always a layer to come to if we start to feel too distracted or the threat is too strong in the body. But for a lot of us, the thinking mind is safe. So we could always go to the thinking mind in the form of labeling, labeling in on the inhalation, out on the exhalation. If it's comfortable to be with the body in this way, just continuing to breathe into the feet, breathe into the body, breathe out, let everything be at ease. Be at ease means just let it be as it is. We're not forcing relaxation. We're not trying to relax. Trying to relax is like trying to tell someone else to calm down. It just doesn't work that well usually. So if it doesn't work for someone else, why would it work for our nervous system and body? Instead, we're creating healthy, compassionate relationship here. The compassion is just being with things as they are, if we can. It's not always comfortable, but part of this is actually relating to discomfort, if we are. That could be subtle, sleepiness, a little bit of anxiousness, buzz in the body. And as I said, if that's too strong, we can come out of the practice or we just simply come to labeling the breath. There's always the option to stop the practice, open the eyes. Actually, this is one big advantage to opening the eyes is it centers us in space, especially when we sense what's behind us. Even though we can't see it, we can feel it. We can sense it. It creates safety for a lot of us. So the practice, just introducing a little bit of why we meditate here as we're doing it. So to just trickle in these intentions into the practice. We meditate to learn how to be. I think that's a nice intention, both for a secular intention and also non-secular. Learning to be with life, learning to be with what is. So here we're just learning to be with breath and body. There's no need to even have the intention to get anything in particular, including relaxation. That'll just come as a natural side effect of letting be. Letting be does require this quality of awareness. Sometimes we call it mindfulness, but basically it's this quality of the mind that can be watchful or knowing of our experience. In this sense, we're trying to allow groundedness to merge with that knowingness. Now that you have this kind of added layers, play with that intention a little bit. How does that shift the practice for you, knowing it's just about learning to let be? When we get distracted, we just notice that and come back to letting be with the breath and body. If we're a little bit more advanced in our somatic practice, we can actually let be with strong emotions, let be with anxiety or buzz in the body. Let be means allow, but meet with care. We're not going into rumination, catastrophizing. And this takes time. Often we have to dip our toe and come out, dip our toe and come out. A lot of you as therapists will know this as titration, right? For some of these practices. And again, we have to be available to that. So only if you're available to that. If you're not, just labeling in and out on the inhalation is fine. We're doing the practice in short bursts. When there's no forcing and there's nothing to get, we can actually find groundedness and mindful awareness. So if we're working with a lot of distraction in the practice, which all of us struggle with when we meditate, it's actually part of why we meditate, to understand distraction. Or if we're experiencing a lot of discomfort in the body or anxiety, how can you provide an attitude of care at this point? Care in the form of meeting, allowing, and non-judgment. Could just be as simple as an attitude of this is arising, this is what's happening. An acceptance applied to this is arising, that we don't need to fight it or get rid of it. I said there's always the option to just stop the practice if something is too strong. But if we're able to meet some discomfort, if that's happening for us, how can we invite that in? How can we provide a sense of kindness and love towards that? For a lot of people, that's a real key point to shift the practice. So just offer that to your emotion, offer that to your body, offer that to your nervous system right now. What might that look like for you? One way it works quite well for me is to not conceptually conceive of it, just simply meet the feeling as the feeling, feel the feeling. There's an attitude of acceptance, non-judgment, and kindness. There's also mindful awareness. I'm not completely hijacked by that feeling. Covers both bases. We're not bypassing, but we're also not ruminating and caught in it as much. Experiment with that for yourself, what that might look like on a feeling level. If you're familiar with more somatic practice, if you're not, just do that through the breath, bringing the breath into areas that need a little bit of love, that need a little bit of kindness. You breathe in with a sense of kindness, you breathe out, just allowing things to unravel if they want to. We just got a few more minutes here of practice. And in our last minute of practice, just letting things be. There's nowhere to get, nothing to fight. Merging this in a few moments when you feel comfortable opening the eyes, if you close them. But opening the eyes isn't the end of practice, it's actually the beginning. It's when we start to merge this quality of presence and groundedness with our day. So when you're ready, you can just start to open the eyes and without looking around, just allow yourself to look straight ahead. If you're sitting in front of the computer, you could just look slightly up so you're not looking directly at the computer. Just be with the body. Continue to be with the breath for a few moments. But now we're kind of in this mode where we tend to be active, but we're kind of in this in between. We're not completely active, but we sense probably more thoughts are arising based on our sense of sight. This triggers a lot of thinking for us, more than any other sense usually. Depends on the person though. And we could just start to gently look around the room, move the gaze a little bit, or gently move the body. Just trying your best to stay with mindful awareness. It's not a strict thing. It's just a sense of presence. It's a sense of nowness. It's a sense of nowness in movement, nowness in what you're perceiving. Hey, thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, Scott.
Sorry, that went a little longer, but I kind of chose a little more in-depth route, trusting you all can hang.
It's great. I was trying not to think about my questions that I had for you while while we were practicing. Mostly did okay. So I prepared a whole list of questions for Scott, but I don't want this to be, necessarily a QA between him and me. So if anybody else wants to, jump in, I'd really, it'd be great if it was a broader discussion, but I realize we have to get started somewhere, so I'll jump in and go to my list. And you actually talked about this a little bit already in your intro, Scott. That your work, one-on-one as a teacher, as a mentor, or your work with groups. Um, People who are looking to deepen their Dharma practice. I'm kind of wondering how similar this is to the therapist-client relationship, right? And
Yeah.
maybe you can kind of do you kind of find that you talk through some of the same things that somebody might discuss with their therapist, and how that's different with you?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. And just real quick before I say something about that, if you all have questions about the practice, just kind of jot something down real quick and then I'll leave some time for that. Yeah, it's kind of a question that I consistently have, right? So it's not like I don't have an answer to that. That's a that's more of an active question for me because I'm always careful. I think there is a healthy professional boundary there, right? That I like to keep, though at the same time I also think, and you all are welcome to disagree with me, it's also okay to question that boundary because that boundary is also something we've decided as consensus as a modern society that's only existed since the time of modern psychology, right? Where these types of what we now could call Buddhist psychology or Indic psychology, because it relates to other Indic traditions, other religious traditions of India, these have existed a lot longer, as I said. So I don't know. I think there's healthy exploration there, and for me, when I'm doing mentoring work, yeah, I just sort of I try to be as human with the person as possible, and a lot of that does include, um, it's really different with each person. So for some people, they really come from to me for Buddhist study and to really work with a path of meditation, and that's not always prescriptive, but it does have a prescription, and it also has like very personal experiential stuff that happens. But there's a place in the path for that, meaning there's material, there's commentaries, there's, 2,600 years of different meditators experimenting. So some people come to me for that. And so that's pretty clear with what that container is. And I may bring in a little bit of somatic emotional work if I see that meditator is blocked, because there's modern there's problems we have as modern meditators where we're trying to access the Buddhist path or something that's more traditional, but our blocks, some of our blocks might be cultural. They We might share some in common with people of different cultures or from people 400 years ago, but some are quite new. Like I do think our nervous systems are much more activated in general, like on a constant basis than they were, let's say, even 100, 200 years ago in any part of the world. That's just one of my beliefs or hypotheses. So I will work with people that in that, and I think the boundary there is just sort of keeping it to meditation, keeping it to sort of, the person doing their own work, and I think for most therapists it's like that anyways. But it's less about processing. It's more about, hey, here's a practice to do. Go ahead and do that. And then we come back to talk about what's coming up, and I may be able to offer support in what's happening and or process a little bit. That's typically the kind of work I do. Though for some people, they choose to sort of fall into a more, I don't know, sharing relationship where they mostly just want to talk about their problems, right? Which is not that different than talk, let's say talk therapy, like traditional talk therapy. And again, I don't, I tend to view, I view us through a lens of also Buddhist non-duality, where I'm not tracking, and again, I don't want to say most therapists are doing this anyways, but I'm not tracking DSM or any of that. I'm not tracking like what's going on with a personality disorder. If I suspect something, actually I've few people with possible personality disorders popped up for me, and I made sure pretty quickly to make sure they had therapy support with someone who could properly work with that if that needed to be diagnosed and worked with. But anyways, I typically don't diagnose people, obviously. And I'm not working with a sort of psychological issue. I'm working with a person and how they relate to their emotions and how they relate to their thinking processes. So it has this other approach, which isn't always that different from modern psychology, but the relationship, I like people to do their own work as much as possible. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm still thinking about this.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I have like 100 follow-up questions to that, but I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole
Yeah.
on it. Um, and so, one of the things I was curious about asking you is that, mindfulness has evolved, as, basically like a therapeutic modality, right? Um, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering, how the, Buddhist concept of mindfulness compares, in your mind to how it's being kind of operationalized in a therapeutic setting, kind of
Yeah.
where the differences are.
Yeah. Very good question. Are you guys ready for a deeper dive? Is that okay? We're going to talk about the Matrix here, okay? It's like a modern analogy I like to use. Um, yeah, this is a great question. And I think this is where we're finding there's been a lot of blending and confusion around this as sort of the mindfulness movement has happened. There's a lot of great things that have happened from the popularization of mindfulness and all that. As you said, Corey, like we all know this has been cherry picked out of different Eastern traditions, not just Buddhism, but Taoism and Hinduism to a certain degree. And probably the most influence has been Buddhism. And then it's it's trying to be applied in a way that's relatable to people, in a way where most of us we want to fix our life, like we want to feel better, right? Now here's the deeper dive from the Buddhist perspective. Buddhism doesn't believe life is fixable. So it's a little bit of a controversial topic, but it comes out, and I've noticed there's some psychotherapy modalities popping up now, like around spiritual psychology and stuff like that, non-dual psychology, which is a bit more fringy stuff, but not in a bad way, just sort of, I know it's not the mainstream. They're starting to kind of pick up on some of this where what if we don't try to fix someone? What if life actually isn't fixable? But again, I'm not saying you all or any therapist is saying that we're trying to fix someone, but I think a lot of clients, a lot of people approach us either implicitly or explicitly wanting to be fixed, right? Because that's how, let's be honest, that's how we live our life. This is one of our habits as a human being. It's part of the human predicament of trying to find sort of peace, and it's actually a beautiful thing. In Buddhism, that's acknowledged that we all want to find peace. And that's a beautiful thing. That's coming from our innate compassion from a Buddhist perspective. But at the same time, we have to be really clear, how are we trying to find that peace? And so sometimes I call this like care misdirected. And what I mean by this is we all care, but sometimes that care gets misdirected and it doesn't necessarily provide the peace we want. So part of the premise from Buddhism is that um, actually life isn't fixable, and part of waking up, part of finding, let's just call it peace right now, but it's a little bit nuanced what we mean by that in Buddhism. Part of what finding peace is actually reconciling with imperfection. and not only reconciling with imperfection, but realizing that there's a whole layer of what we call delusion on perception, and that's for all human beings, not just human beings who would, you know, have like deeper psychological issues. Let's put it again. I don't know the term that people use nowadays, so I apologize if that's not the correct term. It's not politically correct. We all are sort of in some kind of a delusion, more or less, and this is what causes suffering. And we call that delusion dualistic clinging or dualistic thinking. So that's really the deep dive in Buddhism. I'm not going to go too much into that unless you want me to. So that would be the difference. Is it's sort of like but at the same time, basic Buddhism does, if our life is chaos and we can't function in a relative way, if we can't just sort of understand how to work with a complex emotion and not send our life into chaos, Buddhism advises you work on that, right? So it's not just saying go to this higher thing and, you know, forget it. There's layers to this, but I think the main difference is sort of what I've noticed. In Occidental cultures, we have a strong materialistic bent, and so that gets subtly represented in how we also inhabit our psychology and treat it, essentially. Yeah. Sorry, it's a big question. I'm not able to answer it fully, but
So
I'm
when you
trying.
say, just as a quick follow-up to that, so when you say that it's not fixable, what I hear is that the problem then is my relationship to it, you know, not it. Is that about right?
Yeah, I think that would be like the that would be the first step, because again, it's sort of I like this analogy from a story I heard the other day of sort of like if we found something on a mountaintop, but we're just shouting from a mountaintop, we haven't come down to the town or river to to bridge what we learn on a mountaintop. No one's going to hear it. It's just shouting on a mountaintop. So yeah, to make things relatable, I think that would be one of the first steps. Is yeah, just we can shift our relationship to it. We can shift how we're working with something, but that relationship is turtles all the way down. It's deep. It's sort of like the layer of what reality actually is from a Buddhist perspective is infinite, and we're sort of one of our habits as a human being from a Buddhist perspective is we're boxing it in, and that includes both sort of what we might call like mental wellness or mental health, and that also includes sort of like beyond that. So Buddhism doesn't just want mental health; it wants to break apart the way we're interpreting reality, essentially, which that would be at the root of suffering or the root of pain. So I think that's the big difference. That's sort of again, I've only seen some non-dual psychology sort of go there and talk about awakening and things like that, But typically, for us to have a balanced nervous system, let's just say some semblance of mental wellness, we don't need to wake up. We don't need to go into those things, right? But one of my teachers just calls this, healthy human beingness. There's some basic qualities of just being a healthy human being, but that doesn't mean things are perfect. There's still problems. Actually, enlightenment or awakening doesn't mean things perfect. Things are perfect. It just means we've gone beyond perfect and not perfect. So it's like a whole different category. Yeah.
That's cool. Um, Again, I've got my list here, but guys, feel free to, to bounce in when you want to. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Scott, is, for people who don't already, for therapists who don't already, in your view, what are, maybe some effective ways that they could incorporate meditation into sessions?
Yeah. There's something I forgot to mention because you started the first question around the mindfulness movement, and of course you all know that's being integrated into a lot of modern therapy work. And I'm sure some of you are noticing actually that can really dysregulate a client, right? I mean, it's sort of like now we're knowing that like there's some sort of base level one needs, because if you start paying attention more, we also notice what's wrong more, right? And this can cause problems for someone who's not ready for that. So I think this is as the kind of mindfulness movement grows up, they're seeing more of that. And so what I find, as I said, earlier, what I find really helpful when I'm just sort of working with a new person whether in Buddhist material and waking up or just in healthy human beingness. I really like body-based somatic work, and again, this is sort of what I pull from is mostly Buddhism, but it's in Buddhism it's implicit because I don't know how to say it. One of the hypotheses some of us are thinking about is that possibly as we've modernized and emphasized critical thinking above anything else in the education system, this also conditions us out of emotional intelligence and, let's say, somatic intelligence or interoceptive intelligence, right? And again, I don't know. I can't say 100%, but I do have a suspicion that human bodies were quite different even 50, 60 years ago, if not 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And that just goes across the board. And so I think much more what it's just helpful for all of us, whether it's in a therapy modality or one's own meditation work or the work I do with people, is introducing people to how to reconnect to the body in a compassionate way, and how to reconnect to feeling, but not feeling through thinking about feeling at, feeling through feeling the feeling. So I do a lot of that work with people. And I've noticed in my own life that's made a huge difference to my anxiety issues, relational trauma that I have, as well as just sort of how I inhabit the world. It was like a paradigm shift for me at a certain point where um, moving from always, being in the thinking mind and seeing the world through thought and thinking and critical thinking and inference and reasoning to actually feeling the world through the body and a little bit more. And again, it all depends on the person. There's not, we're all at different places here, but I do think in the modern world in general has moved out of that. So yeah, I think that kind of work is just so helpful. All of us working with people um, in need. I think this kind of work is helpful. I don't have to convince you of that. I think somatic therapy is a huge category now. So I think where Buddhism can add to that is I merge that with mindful awareness. So there's a sense of pervasion in awareness practice. We didn't get to that today, but I often lead practices not where you're kind of here and aware, but where you're here and aware. And that's a quality of mind. But with somatic awareness practices, we merge that with feeling world. We merge that with somatic awareness, and so it's sort of like a whole picture starts to come online. So I think that could be really helpful, depending on who you're working with and kind of what they're going through. There's a woman I think who teaches this really nicely, or Judith Blackstone. She's more in the kind of like spiritual psychology arena, but she does some really nice work with sort of opening up a pervasive space and awareness that's connected to the body. So those kinds of practices, I think, can be really helpful when not working with someone who needs those, I would say, would be more advanced steps, right? Because a lot of people just just getting them to feel something is takes time, right? And a lot, some people obviously they're not ready for that. That's going to be too overwhelming. It's going to possibly re-traumatize someone. So it just depends on the person. But anyways, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but things like that.
You did, and then you went ahead and answered my follow-up question in the last little bit there. When you were talking about, people coming in and just wanting to feel better, initially, um, you know, turning around and asking them to sit, with the discomfort, and somatically kind of feel that in the body might be too big of an ask, at that point. And similarly, the pervasive awareness could be overwhelming, and scary, for people if they're
Yeah.
not in the right place for that. So yeah. Um,
Could I say something just about that real quick?
yeah, please.
Because I didn't name it yet, and maybe it's a good idea to name it here. The more and more I explore general Buddhist practice as well as what I'm sharing, what I just shared, kind of like how to meet the feeling world, etc. These kinds of techniques and practices, how to work with discomfort, essentially, I call it becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable, right? That's often some of the work I'm doing with people. But again, people are coming to me as meditators. So, like I said, I'm not working with people who aren't ready for that. If they're not ready, I send them somewhere else, or we do other stuff. Obviously. But the word I want you to introduce is compassion. But this word compassion, it has a very special meaning in Buddhism because it actually means meeting pain. It actually means our capacity to be with pain, but not pain and sort of white knuckle it through pain, to to almost open to pain where it doesn't break us down, but it breaks us open to into a new space of being, and so for me, the Buddhist compassion sort of softens our edges. It makes us even more relational and empathetic with others and ourselves. And when we're practicing it with our own emotions, when we're practicing it with our own, you know, discomfort, there's this space that it opens. It's very raw, and as I said, we have to be ready for that. But it opens something where I feel it offers an opportunity to live in a completely different way, where we're no longer trying to fix something, we're opening up to compassion with something, whatever that is in a given moment. So just to add to kind of what your question was, that's the missing piece I didn't say. It's sort of like if that's not involved, all this stuff can, for me, that's the piece that allows softness in this whole process. Because working with the uncomfortable is really hard for everyone, myself included.
There's a disturbing trend happening here, Scott, where you answer my next question,
I'm not
with
doing
the
that on
prior question.
purpose.
You're really messing me up here.
Sorry.
I was literally just going to say, what role does compassion play?
Sorry,
And
sorry.
I think the second half of the question is still, fresh or applicable here, which is, how can psychologists integrate compassion practice into clinical work?
I mean, there's so much, right? I know Kristen Neff did a lot of work here. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm the right guy for that, though I guess I'm here. Um, yeah, because a lot of my work, I kind of, it's like all of you too. It kind of like evolves, but it's going both ways. Like I'm kind of trying it on myself while I'm working with others. It's not like I'm just working with another, it's relational. When I'm in a session with someone, it's as much what's arising for me as what's arising for them. There's some kind of, and I'm sure a lot of you it's similar. So anyways, but lately, based on that sort of way of working. Um, I'm all about just leaning in, and again, of course, it's first sensing if someone's available to that, right? Sensing, talking to them, making sure that's okay, doing some intro practices to just see, hey, what's their level of interoceptive awareness? What's their level of sort of being able to be with discomfort? And I don't know if I could, maybe it's better to talk about me because it's just sort of, like I said, I'm this, I consider this my own laboratory, right? Myself. And yeah, I'm just sort of inviting in, to me, compassion and what I integrate and what I'd recommend to you if you're ready for that or other people are ready for that is just inviting in more and more of experience. And it's sort of there's always this question when there's contraction around something for me personally, if I get in a fight with my partner and contraction happens, there's the habit that I build to respond with a question. So for me, questions are a large part of compassion work. Open questions, meaning things I can't answer. Just an open question: Can I be with this right now? It's not like what is this, and then I try to figure it out. It's more like, can I feel this? Can I allow this? Can I allow essentially heartbreak? Can I allow my heart to break? Because heartbreak happens in many capacities. It's not just in romantic relationships. If just like my omelet didn't turn out the way I wanted, there's a kind of a mini heartbreak there. You know what I mean? It's silly, but it's true. And so I think incorporating ways of being to relate to heartbreak all day long, especially the smaller ones, it helps at least me to hold the bigger ones. Because if I just wait for you know, when the shoe drops and there's a shocking life occurrence, a death, a fight, a split, a financial, conundrum, whatever, it's sort of too late at that point, you know? So I'm a big advocate of working with the daily kind of, we wouldn't even call it pain, discomfort, annoyances, maybe is the word. And so compassion work there for me, just to kind of go back to your question, Corey, is just meeting it, meeting the feeling, not going into like analyzing it, not, trying to figure out what is this, how do I fix this? Because that's all fixing mentality. So I've learned to trust over, 10 or 15 years of a lot of somatic compassion work, just meeting the feelings again and again. And I don't, I think it gets, for me, it never gets easier. Actually, the stakes grow. I just want to be honest about that. It's not like things work out and then, oh, I'm at this point where I feel better. Actually, it's just like there's more and more shit that comes up that's just more intense, or I can allow more intensity. But what does become easier, so that doesn't become easier, but what does become easier is the habit to remember compassion, the habit to turn towards it more easily than resistance, anger, distraction, whatever, like whatever name, whatever unhealthy reaction, and so that's powerful. I think the habit, the trust of compassion grows.
I'm going to edit that last part out. That it doesn't become
Okay.
easier.
What is it?
That it doesn't become easier. I'm going to edit
Oh, okay.
that
Yeah,
out.
sorry. Yeah,
I think that's bad
let me
news.
just bring it into the like how we can work with it just for a sec, because I may have to just sign off pretty quickly. But Joseph Goldstein talks about this a lot, right, Scott? And so he talks about there, specific things. If you want to foster compassion or understand how it can be an antidote for anger and greed and envy, that is just think about other people. Think about other
sure.
people, right? And you can do that with a client, with a patient, whatever. Um, simply by saying, when you're stuck in that kind of thinking, right? Go out of your way to look what's immediately present in the moment that's available where you can help someone else out. Can you hold the door open? Can you hold the elevator while somebody's walking very slowly towards the elevator from 50 feet away and you're in a rush, right? Can you give the other person, the guy who just needs to get somewhere really quickly on the highway, can you give that person, just give them your lane? Like, what's the big deal? Why do we have to hold on tight to our lane, right? You know,
Sure.
so that,
Yeah.
right? And so Joseph
Sure.
talks about that a lot. Jack Kornfield talks about it. Writes about it a
Yeah,
lot.
that would be the compassion for other.
Yeah.
I'm just a big fan these days.
So, yeah.
So many of us want to fix the world. Very, very few of us actually want to work with ourselves. So what I found is this dive into like really meeting. Again, I'm not saying this angle is for everyone, or I'm just this is what I'm sharing today with you all. It's what popped up. So yeah, of course, it's about kind of opening up. When it comes to others, like you said, Dan, I think one of my favorite questions is just sort of like, what's going on with this person? Just a question of like, opening up empathy, opening up, putting ourselves in their shoes. It goes so far. It goes so far. If we can just open up a question, I wonder why this person did what they did. Not to figure it out, just to start to understand, hey, this person's also going through their, their crappy day or their good day or whatever, just like me. But real quick, Corey, because I wanted to say, yeah, I wanted to add to that. It's not, when I say a statement like it doesn't get better, what I mean is there's a whole other territory of benefit that comes out of this kind of work, which is sort of being open to life without I don't know how to say it, like our protective barriers and our boundaries are healthy until they're not, right? Like, you all probably work with this all the time where, a boundary is necessary so we could start to find ground and space and openness and not chaos, in certain situations. But the boundary isn't meant to be kept there forever. If it is, we're in a state of immature, we never mature. So boundaries are shiftable. So this kind of compassion work, whether it's with others, like you said, Dan, or with ourselves and our emotions, it's sort of like we open to more and we become more resilient. And that is the benefit, you know? It's not, we don't necessarily, I guess I do feel better, but I don't know if I call it better. I just feel more in touch with myself and others, more like, so there's a different quality. Yeah.
When we were in the meditation, you mentioned, that feeling peaceful would be the side effect, to doing the work. And so
Yeah.
I think that's kind of similar to what you're talking about here. You go into it trying to feel better, and you may or may not, but the point is that there are other side effects that, you weren't necessarily looking for, but made your life, better while you were at it.
Exactly. I mean, and this is acknowledged in the Buddhist path. In beginning meditation, we need some level of groundedness. Otherwise, the mind's just all over the place. So I think it's the same when it comes to compassion work. We need some level of ability to feel, that's why I started feeling the feet, feeling the body, really weighting the body to the earth. For some people, that helps to create a sense of safety, a sense of groundedness, and then we can work with compassion and openness right from there. Uh, Again, I'm giving a little bit of a deeper dive here, so I just want to say this isn't. How do you say it? This wouldn't be for everyone, right? Just to say that, yeah.
Got it. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I'm going to ask you one more question here. It's kind of a
Yeah, and
good,
also Heather, Nikki, Catherine, if you all have anything. Sorry, go ahead.
absolutely. I should pause and see if anybody else would like to jump in. No? Okay. Um,
I
if
think
you can
I
offer,
think
Heather had
Catherine's turn.
yeah, I
perfect.
think Heather had a question there on the chat.
Yeah,
Ah, okay.
can you hear me? Because my earbud is like kind of losing power. I don't know if you can hear me. So I was just commenting on at the end of your meditation, I loved it, how you kind of bridged between the meditation proper and now we're going to open up our eyes and we're going to go back into our day.
Yeah,
And because I think people they forget that part, like they can be maybe really become adept at the meditation itself. But then they go
yeah,
off in their day and something happens, and all that good stuff that they maybe noticed or experienced during meditation is not accessible to them any longer.
yeah,
And so you were kind of encouraging, all right, like notice now that you're kind of coming out of this, use your eyes and notice. Notice what you're seeing around you. And I really
yeah,
noticed, like I looked around and I noticed the emotional connection I have to items in my house and how it might be so likely when you're going through your day to just get pulled out of the moment all the time from what you're
yeah,
sensing.
yeah,
And so
yeah, for
I
sure.
really like that part of your meditation. So I wanted to say thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thanks for singling that out. I think it. Yeah, I mean, just to say a bit on that because I think it's a good point you brought up. Is a lot of the times we get, meditation gets touted as this thing that's going to make you feel a certain way. That's how it, you know, uh, you know how it is. Even when we're promoting or we're marketing to get new clients, we have to. I mean, the whole system is to like people want to see some kind of outcome, and not always, but so I think meditation has this idea, oh, feel calm, that's like the kind of advertising and promotion of meditation. When actually, from traditional lineages of meditation, indigenous lineages, it's more about like the meditation is not the main thing. It's to actually help you work with life. So for me, meditation is about life. And then so to help people make that shift, I like these little kind of what you commented on, these little bridges to sort of invite, hey, now what's it like to you're connecting to a quality of yourself. What's it like to bring that into your day as opposed to a state? Because states are just temporary, a state of calm is temporary. But the quality of awareness, which is what we're training in Buddhist meditation, that is ours. We're born with that. We just need to strengthen it. And so this comes down to some things I didn't share, but one way to define meditation in Buddhism is meditation is the practice of strengthening awareness.
Mhm.
And so when we shift the intention, or we can even say the awareness and compassion, when we shift that intention, it totally shifts the way even we relate, because then we realize, oh, this is for life. This isn't for just being on the cushion or, etc.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, Heather. You just made me think of that because I think
Yeah.
that's the added layer. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Thanks.